Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my May 2025 AM reading finale video. I'd like to barrel straight through this. There might be some construction noises outside, but we are already well into June. It is time to wrap up May already. Also, it seems like I'm already down to very little battery, so it'll be maybe a summary of things. Well, anyway, let's get going. Let's get going here. As always in these AM reading videos, I'm going to start by reviewing a short story from a literary journal. And I am currently reading in the Connecticut Review. Let me just find my information in here. It's the fall 2024 edition. And I've read the short story Rest by Cristi Donoso. This is a relatively short story, and it takes place I don't know, it doesn't give us an exact time and place. I'm kind of assuming it's maybe a dystopian future setting, which I already have problems with in the short story form. I have problems with there being enough setup of the world. It just seems to me that it's a dystopian future space. We have vague world building to the effect that all of the men have been sent away and there had been a quarantine. And it doesn't seem to be like a pastime, like, maybe like in World War II when a lot of the men in certain places went off to war, that sort of thing. Because there's like, some evidence of keyboards and things that I kind of associated more with modern culture. It's maybe intentionally vague, but I just can't, like, where the world building. Anyway, the main character is named Lydia, and she is a mother and a wife, and we're opening when the men are returning home, like in some drips and drabs, or actually, well, I guess from 50 to 500 people, so it's starting to get bigger. And she is, I don't know if she's unhappy, but she's not thrilled about it either. The only dialogue in the story is even when a neighbor comes over asking if she might have a watermelon to spare, and that's another hint to the type of world where there's this food scarcity, and Lydia lies and says she doesn't have any watermelons, and she's, because she's hoarding them for her daughter to have a lovely watermelon eating experience. And Lydia is the example of the wife who is just like exuberant that her husband is coming home, and they have a big scene where she rushes out to meet him and runs for the first time in ages, and they go into the house and the door slams. Or if I said Lydia, I mean the other mother, Rebecca. Lydia is the mother who I think wasn't happy. Like it says right here on the page, she wasn't happy, and Simon, her husband, didn't leave. She was going to leave. She has like a lot of letters from him from wherever he went that she never really responded to. She has come into her own alone without him, and there's beautiful language, I guess, about coming into her own. So she's not, necessarily thrilled that he's coming back. But he does come back, and there's a lot of attention ultimately paid to the fact that he does all of the cleaning and so forth that first night, and she doesn't. And this feels like a nod to the fact that this culture seems to be patriarchal, that the women's role was to, cook and clean. And the story opens with saying she didn't do that to welcome him home. She was busy working in the glow of her computer, so I guess that's, reference to the fact that maybe she has some sort of career or something. But, see, this is the thing, it's also short that you don't get any real details. It's all about the beautiful writing. The infrastructure of this place seems to have completely gone astray. Like, they live in a place where the garbage is piled up and that sort of thing. So the men being sent off and quarantined, it's not like the women went into the jobs after them for whatever reason. And I'm just sitting here saying, why is the world like this? And it seems like it's pretty much like this for vibes. And it's just not enough for me. I mean, I like the idea of this beautiful language about how Lydia came into her own without Simon, and that maybe there's a chance that Simon has changed to, I don't know, maybe, become more of a partner, and that they could, have a life together after all of this. But maybe she could have written a longer story where she actually explained all this, and the only dialogue didn't come from the random neighbor. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Future Rachel jumping in here for a quick moment, because with this next book, I think I rambled my way completely off the rails, so I went ahead and actually tried to rein myself in by finally writing my book review first. But the next book I finished, which I've now had to return to the library, is Songs for the Brokenhearted by Ayelet Tsabari. Like I said in my last Am Reading video, to summarize, this is a story predominantly of a Yemeni Israeli woman. She's in her 30s in 1995. This largely takes place around the Oslo Accords. She is at loose ends. She was living in New York and working on a dissertation, but she had an affair which ruined her marriage, and then she kind of ran to the Near East, and that's where she finds out that her mother died. And she and her mother, Saida, had a sort of tense relationship, and it seems like all of the uncomfortable feelings that Zahara, the main character, had about her Yemeni heritage growing up, she kind of distilled into her mother and resented her mother for being uneducated and being subservient and kind of like stereotypical as in terms of being a Yemeni woman of her time. But as she is cleaning her mother's house, she comes to learn more about her. First, most importantly, she learns her mother actually had an affair, and we go into the past when she and Yaqub, the young man she had an affair with, they were both new immigrants to Israel. In the 50s, there were a lot of Mizrahi Jews, the Jews of Middle Eastern descent, who were coming into the country for various reasons. The fledgling nation was, sort of overwhelmed, and they created these camps that, weren't very ideal in a lot of ways, and they were sort of like midpoint stopping grounds for people. And the Ashkenazi establishment, in and of themselves, had some, racist ideas and thought, well, these people, who are backwards and not like us should be grateful for what they have. And anyway, that's where Saida is this lonely young bride who actually is mostly separated from her husband, and she has this affair. And once her husband finds out about the affair, Yaqub has to leave. And so years later, Zahara is actually tracking down what happened to Yaqub and the end of that chapter of her mother's story. Another significant subplot has to do with Zahara's nephew, Yoni, who is this angry, disaffected teenager. And in this, Tsabari is trying to understand how these sorts of teens could be swept up into the fledgling right-wing nationalist movement, which was growing in opposition to the Oslo Accords. At the time, the Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, was, gearing up to sign, a peace treaty with the Palestinians and give back some land. And that rubbed people the wrong way, and it only got worse with the Second Intifada, with, Hamas killing like a lot of civilians in different areas. So that's how Yoni gets swept up into it, like as a place to put his anger, and we go through that situation with him and how he's sort of de-radicalized, which I feel like is a little pat, but maybe makes sense for the situations he's dealing with, and also he's a secondary character. The truth is, it's uneven because, Zahara is so distinctly the main character. And so the other two storylines are uneven in comparison. And what I had trouble with Zahara, I think it's I have biases about her particular character. I mean, this is an internal story where she humbles herself and kind of comes to terms with part of her Yemeni heritage and the way that she had dismissed her mother. She meets a lot of her mother's friends as well and learns about the Yemeni female singing tradition that her mother was part of, and she grows to respect it. But in other ways, it kind of feels like she's a white knight coming into her family, and it feels like maybe she's always right, sometimes with her sister and her brother-in-law. And even like when it comes to her marriage, where, obviously she's the one who cheated, and so, it's, she doesn't come off as a saint, but at the same time, it almost feels like she gets a little bit of a free pass because of her husband's sort of ignorance as a Ashkenazi American Jewish man. I feel awkward saying this because I think this character is very similar to the author, but it's this sort of jaded character who uses sex as currency in a way that kind of rubs me the wrong way, and maybe I even get a little defensive about the fact that there's a victimization thing because of how she perceives and understands her Yemeni culture. And so I think I can get a little defensive with that. But at the same time, it's important in this book to deal with the realities that the Yemeni and Mizrahi culture were marginalized within Jewish society during the time when Zahara would have been growing up. Because of the norms of the Ashkenazi establishment, and so I think also, more broadly speaking, too, this book deals with some very important historical tragedies and controversies, particularly around the mysterious disappearance of a lot of Mizrahi babies and children in the 50s, including in this, story, Zahara's uncle, Saida's son, who was taken from the nursery and in the camp in the 50s. And it's something she has to deal with for the rest of her life. And that threads its way into how the story is structured, too, and into some of Zahara's resentments, which, so yeah, I can understand. It's just sort of like a thing where sometimes certain characters can rub you the wrong way, I think. I wish maybe within the parameters of the story there was a little more nuance in her relationships with her the other characters, but because her mother is dead, so she has to, deal with her mother's legacy rather than actually build up a relationship with her mother, and because the story is so interior about Zohara's relationship with her cultural identity, sometimes other things can feel a little bit flattened. So I think I responded to that a fair bit. At the same time, I think this novel is a bit of a pioneer in paving the way of understanding the Yemeni Jewish experience. The next book I read is The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. This was my page 112 tag pick for March. So I'm putting all my cards on the table. I'm running behind on things and reading, but I'm making it through some things slowly but surely. And I enjoyed this book. I think it took me a little while to get into it, and then I liked it. We're following this nurse, Julia Power, during the Spanish flu in Ireland, and basically following her through just a couple of days, and she's taking care of influenza patients. I'm staying in the maternity ward, but technically those maternity patients were taken into their own ward because they had influenza. And it's a brutal book. There's a lot of death, and there's also a lot of just the absolute pains and traumas of childbirth. It's just, I don't know, it's right there on the page, and it kind of makes me a little more okay with the fact that I have not actually gone into labor myself, because well, I should remind myself this was 100 years ago, and maybe things go less wrong now, and at least we're not dealing with this type of pandemic. But yeah, there is sort of a sad reality over this book, with the war raging and the flu raging, so things feel pretty bleak. And Nurse Power, Julia's all alone in the ward until she gets a helper, this person who has no training. Her name is Bridie. She was on the page 112 tag, and kind of, I don't know, the relationships confused me there, but now I know she's this 22-year-old. She's a very ignorant girl, and we learn a lot about her. And there's a lot of commentary in here beyond the influenza and the war about, I think, a lot of just social norms at the time in Ireland that seem pretty cruel, like, young orphan girls who were raised by religious institutions, and then their upbringings are rife with all sorts of abuse. And then there's other institutions, like for unwed mothers, where they're pretty much used for their free labor, and there's just this sort of, patina of blame and guilt culture that sort of, keeps all of the gears rolling in this. And it's, Bridie coming into the picture that makes Julia aware of this. One of their patients is an unwed mother. Another one is a richer woman who loses her baby. And yeah, we just kind of go through the days, and it's just very compelling in this way, just following this constant action. You can see just how little time nurses have for rest. There is, of course, other commentary about how much like Julia as a nurse knew and understood of her profession, but she still had to wait for doctors to sign off on everything. And of course, most doctors were male, but another of the doctors in this book that we meet was a woman, which was unusual enough for the time, but also this woman was caught up in revolutionary activities. So she there's a whole subplot here where the police are looking for her. So, you know, in a way, I feel like there's so much happening in this book, I should probably start complaining about it or something, but I was too gripped, I suppose. Maybe it's just because of how much forward action, the thrust, the pacing was with this. And it was rife with, you know, commentary that also maybe could feel a little preachy at times, but it also just generally felt realistic to the society they were in. So it worked for me. And I also ruminated a bit on midwifery. And it seems like, you know, we're on the cusp between sort of like the female herbal medicine versus, you know, the male-centered scientific medicine. And so few men even knew or understood how women's bodies worked at the time that it's kind of easy to understand that, you know, maybe the herbal medicine and the midwifery actually has a place, you know, continuing in society. So, and beyond all of that, it was just this relationship with Bridie and Julia, which was, you know, moving and brief about what they were able to teach each other. Like, Bridie gave Julia some street smarts, and Julia gave Bridie the starts of a vocational education. And, you know, maybe it all ultimately was a little too tidy and quick and so forth, but it moved me while it was happening, so that's what worked. And finally, to my shame, I am still in the middle of Adam Unrehearsed by Don Futterman. This I would like to finish very, very quickly. In fact, I picked it up for my Maybe Midrash readathon, which is a May readathon after all. It is a readathon where we pick up fiction and nonfiction that seriously pertains to religion. And so this book takes place in the 1970s. It's kind of, I guess it's one of those books where, you know, you'd argue over whether it's YA or not. To put the cards on the table, Adam is our protagonist, and he is 13 years old. He is studying for his bar mitzvah. He lives in Queens, and there is a whole lot of commentary about the racial realities in Queens right now. There's tension between, well, especially in here, between African Americans and Jews, and, you know, there's some commentary on other groups as well. And there's a lot of danger in riding the subway system, because it was before sort of the crime of the subway system was cleaned out a few decades later. So that's sort of the reality that Adam is living in and reacting to, and he's kind of on his guard. It's the 70s, so it's the era where his generation, you know, some of them are the children of Holocaust survivors, and a lot of them aren't, but he's obviously pretty involved in his Jewish community where the boys are learning to prepare for their upcoming, you know, B'nai Mitzvot. Another big thing that happens is that this sort of eccentric cantor has come into the picture to teach the bar mitzvah lessons to the boys, and I think he's going to be particularly involved with Adam. That's pretty much where I am right now with this book. Hopefully I should be able to say new and interesting things in my upcoming Maybe Midrash, you know, wrap-up video, which should be coming out later this month. And the final book I have to share, I just have an image of my hoopla. Check out. This is BYRON, A Life in 10 Letters by Andrew Stauffer. And as the entire title indicates, it is a book where we are looking at 10 of the letters that Lord Byron, the famous romantic poet, wrote, and then Stauffer, who you know, is a member of you know, an academic Byronic society, goes ahead and gives more insight into the poet's life and experiences. Anyway, I read this book for the BookTube Prize quarterfinals, which are over, and I can say even that this book did not advance into the semifinals, but I did make an entire video where I ranked the 6 books on my ballot and talked about them. So I'll just go ahead, if you want to know more about this book and the other 5 books in my nonfiction group D that I read, then just check out this video down below. And that about covers it for me now. I still have my 1 bar of battery. I seem to still be on the air here, so that's good. And expect me back here soon as I, go into my June reading with my monthly page 112 tag video where it's a TBR game I play and I get so excited by it that I often pre-film it like I did this time. So I'll just get the post-production done and hopefully online soon. I feel like this was rather a flighty, jumpy video where I felt all over the place, which is a weird way to end the month. I have a lot more reading I want to cram into the rest of June, so we'll see how I get through it. And I hope you are all getting through your, TBR lists for the month without much trouble. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.